Alright, back into the thick of it. Loading back into the game. I took a 4-hour nap between sessions. This is like session 2.5. I wonder. I guess you could access that as soon as you get that room. But anyway, I think Roxy needs some new makeup. I decided I'm gonna beat the entire game in one day. Uh, use the Roxy Toxic. Ooh. Because there's so many. Oh.
You need to fix me right now. Nobody will like me. Fix me. I look horrible. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. You are right. Everyone else, pay attention to me. You are... Look at me.
I'm trying. I don't really.
Pay attention to me.
What the fuck? Okay, that one was kind of weird. I didn't know what detail I was modifying because it's like just like the side of her face. So Roxy is destroyed in this. So we are post security breach.
How bad is it? Be honest.
Pretty bad.
Look at me.
Okay, oh, you do have cheek marks still.
Pay attention to me. Look at me. You look at me. Everyone else. Look. You are the... Everyone wants. You are.
What the fuck? I don't get it.
How bad is it? Be honest. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me.
This?
Look at Look at me. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. This will work. Everyone,
I get it now.
pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Look at me. Pay attention to me.
What? This one is so freakish. Like, I don't get it. I don't get what's behaving so weird. Because I'm looking at her the entire time. Looking at you.
I'm not a monster. Look at me.
Right? And then claw.
Look at me. You're doing this. Pay attention to me. Look at me. Look at me. Everyone wants to be here. It's not working. Pay attention to me. You are indestructible. Pay attention to me. Look at me. Everyone loves me. Look at me. Pay attention to me. Look at me. You are indestructible. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Everyone.
This is taking like a billion%. What do you mean? This one feels like the least warranted for when it jump scares me. Because from my perspective, as the player, I am looking at her. And at the corner of my eye, I'm grabbing these
If I ever
things.
get in a mood, use the walkie. It calms me. You don't have to say a thing ever. Ever. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me.
Okay, I can barely see that.
You are. Everyone loves you.
Okay. don't even know what this accessory really is. So it's not that? What the? Oh, God. Okay, I'll take the loss on that one. This one is hard in a different kind of way than the other ones were, where it's like, it's hard to tell what the hell I'm looking at, and it's extremely unforgiving.
I'm not a monster! Look at me!
I think for this first one, you just have to be extremely...
Look at me! Look at me!
What the fuck?
Pay attention to me!
This is so bullshit.
Don't worry about what other people think. Pay attention to me! You're doing this on purpose! Look at me! Beauty is you. You are. You. You are. You
It's broken. It's broken. I was pressing the thing when it wanted me to, and it didn't work. Hit the button. I haven't had much to say about this one because it's freaking out.
How bad is it?
I don't think this is the way it's supposed to be.
Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me.
What?
Look at me. Look at me. Beauty is everyone loves you. Look at me.
What eye is this? Why? I didn't know what eye that was. There is no eye like that, it looked like. Because it was like gray and it was pointing left?
Here's a little tip. If I ever get in a mood, use the walkie.
Is it that one?
Calms me. You don't have to say a thing ever. Ever. Look at me. Pay attention to me.
Which... Why? I'm looking at you. I don't think she should be able to jump scare you if you're looking at her, in my opinion, because what am I doing wrong if I'm looking at her? She was not in her frenzy mode.
Mood. Use the walkie. It calms me. You don't have to say a thing ever. Ever.
On her side.
Look at me.
I am looking at you.
Pay attention, everyone. You are the beauty is forever. Look at me. You could never understand. Look at me. Don't worry about what
You have to hold it.
Look at me.
Star. Weird jaw bow.
Me. Look at me. Pay attention to me. Everyone. Look at me. You could never understand. Smart enough. You
Okay.
look at me.
What? Okay, I've got hoop, oval.
Pay attention to me. Look at me.
What do you mean? Brown? What? Ugh! This one pisses me off. Because I'm looking at her. This is a minigame that should reward you looking out of your peripheral vision. And I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to like barely tilt my head so I can see.
Here's a little tip. If I ever get in a mood, use the walkie. It calms me. You don't have to say a thing ever. Ever.
Okay.
Look at
No, blue. Side.
Look at me.
I'm looking at you as much as I fucking can. Starting.
You are smart enough. You look at me. It's not working.
So, problem with this one, and all of episode 8, and I think potentially more episodes, specifically what would have been episode 10, I made several different audio mistakes that effectively led to audio not recording at all for multiple episodes. Episode 8, the rest of episode 6, all of episode 7 and 8 and 10, as far as I know, are completely lost audio-wise. I don't know what to do about that. I think I'll just have to like rename the videos around them, though note in the actual videos I'll be like, this is episode 9, this is episode 12, etc. Ignoring videos that definitely did happen. Some audio issues included that I didn't turn the mic on. Another audio issue was the mic ran out of power, which was specifically what happened with this episode 6 and 7. The audio just vanished. Or from my perspective, and then The audio just cut out at one point because the mic ran out of power because I had been recording for so long without charging it. And I also left it on, I think, during one of my naps at one point. I took to try and keep playing this game as much as possible, which was not a smart strategy in the long run. That was kind of one of the problems with recording audio and visual separately, is that's two different things that can go wrong at a given time. Conversely, that also means, in theory, it's two different things can go right, or one thing can go right if the other fails. In this case, there was almost always footage of the actual game when it came to what I was doing. The problem quickly became, I realized, was I'll realize this in like part 10 or 11, that I was playing on the wrong settings for what my setup could handle. I was playing on the default settings, which are fine, I get them, but I should have been playing on low everything but textures, which I put up to high in later playthroughs, or later episodes. That drastically fixed the performance on my end, and and made almost every minigame much more playable, and made the main screen run buttery smooth. Luckily, I think all of the videos that matter have audio, specifically the ending, because I'm already not the best commentator for games in general. I mean, there's a reason my theories channel, there's a reason my theories are what picked up, and not my gameplay videos. Those were fine, but most people came for, like, if I was doing a challenge before YouTube proper. Before I properly started doing, like, the theory videos, which were almost born out of spite at first. There's a few different topics I had for what, like, my first theory video was going to be. My first... the one I was most passionate about was Michael Motorist, which is why it was the first video that ended up actually happening, but a contender was, like, stuff about, like, the flaws of Cassidy Victim. I'm really glad I didn't do that one, because it's one of those theories that's so messy, because some people have different definitions of Cassidy Victim. At the time I was going to make that video, there was a common version of it where it was basically just Bite Victim 5th, but also with the step that the crying child was named Cassidy. Whereas nowadays there's kind of two different versions of it. There's Bite Victim 5th, where the 5th missing children incident victim is the Bite Victim. And also, and he doesn't have to be named Cassidy. And then there's a version where the Bite Victim's name just happens to be Cassidy, but he doesn't have to be the 5th missing kid. Whereas, like, the version I wanted to make a video on was both, kind of. Some people had, like, there were some different variations on it, including, like, one version where the puppet is counted as the 5th missing kid, and the crying child is just his own unique thing, unrelated. And it wasn't good. I never really liked it, and I had a really personal pet peeve against it, because I was seeing a lot of posts on it, and it was one of those, I swear it was born out of spite. It was born because we found some way to fit some of the pieces in a way that no other theories could, and didn't realize we didn't need this theory to get those answers. Because that's something that happens with theories, is sometimes you get weird-ass answers to explain things, and then you realize that can be true with, like, this small part of it that explains something can be true without the entire theory being true. I think that's one of the most interesting things about FNAF, as in the YouTuber, spelled phonetically, John from FNAF, is his channel, like, a lot of the main concepts I don't agree with personally, but I realized was, like, no, a lot of these ideas aren't coming from nowhere, and there are some really cool conclusions that come from it. And there's, like, a lot, like, there is an understanding of a lot of the forces at play, like, what characters are responding to what. It's just like what he says, what characters are and what aren't, etc. Like that's where it starts getting messy. Is like the mimic is baby, is all that. But then there's like good observations, like the fact that the baby says you're destroying what's bad, and that being talked about in conjunction with Mike saying I put her back together, and like think about like what is being put back together means. Those are the kind of things I like from John from FNAF, and a lot of those individual ideas are good or interesting. It's a lot of times held back by. It's a lot of times just kind of held back by the brain. I might keep this audio in. I mean, I've got like an hour of visuals to keep in. I might just keep this audio unedited, just scaled up to be decent volume. You can hear the stumbles and all, because I mean, you're here for the long ride. If I'm actually going to keep all of this in, who knows if I can even talk for like 40-50 minutes. But what I was getting at was that there's, even in bad theories, there can be an interesting point to be made. And Custody Victim was almost the first video was specifically responsive to that, and I'm really glad on several levels I didn't do that, because that sets up my channel as something that purely spites other topics. I guarantee that video wouldn't have been as popular as Michael Motorist, and I don't think unless I got a hit as big as Michael Motorist, I don't think I would have been able to do more YouTube, or thought it had potential. I might have, but like I would have needed a hit like Michael Motorist. I mean, Michael Motorist probably still would have existed. I think I would have been passionate enough about it to really make it. Anyway, and then I'm trying to think of like, oh, the other thing that I always thought about, that I'm kind of glad I didn't do, but I still wonder about the timeline where I did do, and I still want to make it actually, is really any Undertale video, but there's a specific one I've had in mind for a long time. There's kind of been different versions of what the video itself would be, but a lot of it would be about, I've always wanted to make an Undertale AU, even though that's kind of a trend that died out a while ago, or the kind of genre that died out at a certain point. Because Undertale AUs used to be like a dime a dozen, everywhere, constantly being made, and that's not really the case as much so anymore. At least it doesn't attract the high-level creative, there are some really talented creatives and artists and stuff who would make Undertale AUs. And that's not really that's not to say there's no one anymore. That's not saying there's no one talented. It's just like, there was so much, and so much of it was actually good mixed in with the garbage that's what made it such a messy, it's what made it kind of popular, and what made it messy was there was so much good that the fans of everything were seeing, and I think that's what made it controversial, was there was so much garbage that floated around that everyone else was seeing. If you didn't like Undertale, it was really easy to find the bad. When if you were in the community, oftentimes you would find the good too, or see more of the good. It's kind of like your first time buying it's really anything that has a different level of value depending on what money you spend, or like what you're looking for. It could be like, oh, your first time buying headphones, your first time buying a car, your first time whatever. It's one of those, if you're in the community that represents, it's really easy to find what you're looking for and what you want. Whereas if you're the first time buying headphones or buying a car, you don't know what any of the statistics mean. What the hell's a decibel? Like, what the hell's an... I actually don't know cars enough. What's 1080p on a monitor? Is just, bigger number means better, right? I mean, it's kind of true, but like, the point is, you only have a loose sense of what things are. So it's like, when you're looking for garbage, or you're expecting garbage, or you don't know what good to look for, you're going to find garbage. And I think that's kind of what led to like a lot of the perspective of Undertale and its community. But that's something I might have talked about in that video. That's something I actually probably would have to an extent. And I might if I ever do make this video. But I wanted to make a video kind of talking about one of my own AAU ideas that I've toyed with for ages. Much older than theories. I'm much older than probably older than my channel, yeah. Itself. I mean, like, maybe my channel was around, but it must have been really, like, this must have been year one. Only subscribers are my friends and myself. kind of time. Which, to be fair, was most of my history, which is why I'm having trouble placing it, because it's like, I had like 60 subscribers before the theory videos. I got to 100. I got to like 100 or 200 because I was the world's best Giraffe Town player, and that got a little bit of attention. And I still am the world's best Giraffe Town player. But that Undertale video, the Undertale AUs, because I've got two now. I actually only had one for most of the time I wanted to make this video, but I actually have two ideas now. One of them I think might be a better starter one because it's a very short, contained story. There's only one other, like, there's only like one extra season's worth of story, if that makes sense. If it was a show, I know exactly what season 1 would be. I know pretty much how long season 1 would be. And I know what I would do if I wanted a season 2 equivalent story. And it would not go any longer than that. Whereas, and let's call that Crow's Tale. Crow spelled C-H-R-O. Because one of the core concepts in it would be a character called Crow following around I don't know if I would say the green soul or just in this alternate universe, this kid has a green soul and they're the main character, kind of. So it's Crow, this kind of character following them around, and then there's the human with green soul. Hales is the name I've written down on my notes. And it's the one I remember off the top of my head for the kid, the human. I just thought that sounded like it's the right kind of like, that's not a common name. And it sounds like a real name, but it's not really. It's kind of like Frisk. It kind of sounds like Fritz, which is a real name, but I don't know anyone named Frisk, or I've never heard of the name. And likewise, Hales sounds like a real name, but I've never... Actually, I think I knew someone in high school whose last name was Hales, but maybe that was subconsciously buried. But, like, it is not a first name of anyone I've ever known or heard of. So it's like kind of that perfect, like, it conveys the same vibe there. And this is and the focus of this one is, in this alternate universe, while humans have fallen to the underground, their souls have been destroyed before they ever get to the exit. And also in this timeline, Azrael's been stuck as the king without anyone else to help him. The idea that being that Kara never died to cross the barrier, or the soul was never absorbed by Azrael across the barrier, and hence they never both die, hence Undertale never happens as we understand it. So Azrael's just been stuck ruling the underground the entire time, and has been kind of slowly deteriorating mentally as no one can get a human soul. So you have the mystery of why can't anyone get a human soul. You have Azrael, who's so desperate to help people that he just wants one soul so he can walk through the barrier himself to free everyone. Because that's something that Undertale proper mentions, that you can't cross, or you can cross the barrier with only one human soul if you're a monster. And then you could just get 6 souls on the human side, then walk back and use that power to free everyone else with the 7 souls combined. So the idea is Azrael's smart enough to know about that, and he only needs one, but in this timeline, no one's ever gotten one. The humans just kind of blip out of existence from most people's perspective. And they've just been down there for so long. So they're like, everything's a little bit more decrepit. I would want Undyne to be like strangely old in this, and kind of like a little more like retired Ronin kind of feel, rather than like I'll take you all down. It's like another one kind of vibe. I have a very specific vision for like the Papyrus Sands counterpart in this, and also like Metaton. Metaton's almost more like a... I'm trying to figure out, because I want things in Papyrus to kind of be a bit of surprise, because they appear in a context you wouldn't expect them to appear in. But Metaton, I want to be kind of like maybe I would say Zero from Mega Man, with kind of like this bounty hunter flair of like and stuff like that, where it's like the idea that in this world, the society was so desperate for even one human to be killed for hope. Because like that's something they mentioned on Undertale 1, like proper, is like the fact that they have killed humans brings them hope. Like that gives them that gives them like the feeling like, oh, we can get out, we can win, we can beat this. Eventually. And then the idea in this is like they've never had that. Every time a human appears, they vanish mysteriously, or around the time they die, or after they die. The soul is never acquired. That's the point. And that's just so depressing for everyone. The idea that every time they have a blip of hope, it's going to be taken away. And the idea is Mettaton was built in that image. He's not built for entertainment. He's built basically for pure-blooded, the purpose of Mettaton Neo, purely to hunt humans and defeat them. So I wouldn't design him like Neo. Like I said, I would like to design him more like a Mega Man Zero, like Mega Man X Zero kind of aesthetic. I think Zero specifically is the one that fits Mettaton a little more. And of course, we're going to have a slightly mentally deranged Azrael. I'm still a little. I want to do something with Snowden, but I can't figure out what I want the Snowden arc to be like. I also think I know what I want to do with Undyne, or not Undyne, what I want to do with Alphys, but I'm a little unsure on that. But that's Crow's Tail. Because that's... I might just use Snowden to do Crow and Tail's character building time. First and foremost, and then let the encounters be the rest of the story. And then the much older idea. This is one so old it basically created Neon Dynamo 3 steps removed. So we're going to call this Monarch Tale. The original version of it centered around the idea of a Frisk who rather than having control over time had the ability to do anything else. I don't even just mean like space control. I mean like anything that was not what determination is, the ability to try over and over again, the resetting, or all that. And it's the idea that they have power over like everything else, and that being like their shtick. And that's kind of all there was to it, other than them being a kind of a mischievous little prick. Because that was the other idea. Is like, once again, it was like supposed to be like the anti-Frisk kind of premise of like, this is a much younger me. This is very around like Undertale's release date time period. Like, so this would be 2015, 2016. Writing standards of me, and it's like the only bit there was that they were a bit of an ass with unlimited power. And that kind of, when I ended up doing like a D&D campaign, kind of, to call it a D&D campaign would be generous. It was more of a role-playing campaign, in general, and through that I created a few characters, one of which being kind of at a first revision of this concept, unrelated to Undertale, called Platinum Plate, and he's similar, but the difference was he wasn't the main character, which made it work much better. Platinum Plate was basically like almost like the DM stand-in, where he was the call to action. He was this bored god of reality who wanted to see people do interesting things, so he would drag them to other scenarios and stuff like that. And then I had other characters who were supposed to be the other metals. I think actually Copperplate might have come first, but Goldplate was the one that ended up being like the main character I would focus on when I was supposed to make my first webcomic, which was Plate Chronicles. Plate Chronicles follows Goldplate, this guy who was born without powers in it's kind of like that Onward, that modern fantasy premise where it's like, it's Earth, but magic's always been real, superpowers have always been real, history's been written around that. And like, you can just go to Vampire Land or whatever if you want. Like, it's shit like that. And it's kind of that, I'm kind of riffing on stories like Castlevania, where they just treat like history just happens, but you can just find like vampires and shit if you wander enough. That's kind of how this world works. It's like, oh, it's a modern city, oh, but there's like robot mutants running around. Don't worry about it. That's just Tuesday. Or like Invincible or any of those series where it's like, it's a strangely normal modern world despite the craziness that exists in it. That was kind of what Plate Chronicles was like. That's why like, the world Goldplate comes from. And the idea was he was kind of like this ultimate adventurer who was born with no powers but has accrued so many magical artifacts and items with a bag of holding that and has so much experience that he can do almost anything himself. The difference being he's kind of... I don't know if this... I don't know if I was inspired by One Punch Man when I first made Goldplate, but he kind of became... But I could see like the connections in my brain maybe later formed. At first he was just kind of bored, and now it's more like he just doesn't have anything left to say to anyone, is kind of more the angle I would go for now if I were to make Plate Chronicles. But I was working on Plate Chronicles Chapter 1, and then my computer got hit. And like it corrupted all the images and the Adobe files, because I was using Adobe Illustrator for a comic, which was stupid as shit, by the way. Adobe Illustrator is like a logo design software thing. It is not meant for traditional art, as we think of it. It is meant for like vectors and gradients and all this shit. I might as well have tried to draw in GIMP for my entire comic. And that's not dissing GIMP. I'm just saying, like, functionally, it was not what I needed. And then then after that happened, I got Clip Studio Pro as a Christmas gift for my aunt. And I was like, eventually, I was kind of not depressed, but like, I was just kind of upset and didn't know what to do with my art for a bit. Because I'm like, do I redraw everything? Like all the concept art I've ever done and all that? Because I'm a huge concept art person. I draw so much art before I draw anything else. And then I finally make the goddamn comic. And then I tried Clip Studio Paint, and then I got better at it, and I got more and more used to Clip Studio Paint. And then I think around this time, because I had spent so much time redoing art, I realized, and getting used to Clip Studio Paint, I realized I wanted to do Neon Dynamo first. And Neon Dynamo was born from Plate Chronicles premise. The idea was, at the time, this was like the season 4 villain. He just kind of was supposed to vanish without any explanation, sort of. Like, he would be beaten, and there'd be this implication that he was going to be, like, reincarnated. And the twist of Neon Dynamo originally was that it was going to be a short-lived spin-off that you thought was completely unrelated, just in a parallel universe or whatever. And then the reveal was, one of the main characters is a reincarnation of Tierra. This character's not even named Tierra anymore in Plate Chronicles, the equivalent of what this would be. And that was going to be like the bit. Actually, I'm just going to say it was Rust. Rust was supposed to be a reincarnation of like this violent reality god. And you can kind of see some of the DNA of how that would evolve into Rust eventually, but that plot line's completely been dropped. Well, Rust still had, like, there's still some, like I said, you can see the DNA. Rust's origin story is still kind of ambiguous in some spots where it's like, canonically, he's just found in the woods by the guy who will end up being his foster dad. Like, there's no context for, like, where his original biological parents would be or anything that led to him existing or whatever. Like, for all we know, he could be the reincarnation of a reality warping evil spirit. But we're missing that context to his origin story in Dynamo now, the current version of the story. But at the time, the bit was he was the reincarnation of Tierra, which is why his powers were so destruction-oriented, why he could be so violent randomly. That was going to be like the original bit. There is going to be a character named Tierra in Neon Dynamo. It is not going to be the reincarnated reality god character concept. It is going to be very different. The entirety of Neon Dynamo changed drastically in the time between the computer crash and what ended up being Chapter 1 of Neon Dynamo. Because I realized the more and more I planned out that story, A, I wasn't going to do the reality god reincarnation concept after a while. And B, I mean, I almost did. There's a tiny remnant of it in Chapter 3 specifically. And I kind of left it ambiguous because I knew I was uncertain about the details, and it now has a different meaning completely. It's, so in one of the panels, there's a diagram of Rust's powers, How Rust's powers work, the main character Neon Dynamo, is he has this energy bouncing around inside his body that he sort of just releases and it goes wherever. It's not like a Dragon Ball Ki Blast where you focus the energy and you fire it. He just has this always inside of him, always trying to escape, and he just sometimes lets it out and it blows shit up. And in that diagram of it, you can see it's like black and orange in some spots. This is the idea of, like, it's so concentrated it changes its hue and color into, like, this concentrated bit. That's what it means now. Originally, that's what Tierra's powers were going to look like. Or that's what, like, the idea was in Plague Chronicles, since he has reality alteration, he would make, like, these orangish kind of black hole attack things. And the idea was, like, oh, if you pay attention, you can notice that early. Was going to be like one of the concepts I had before I even made Neon Dynamo Chapter 1. And I ended up doing it, but it was like, I knew it wasn't, when that chapter ended up existing, I knew it wasn't going to be the same as I had originally planned. I'm just going to keep talking until I felt the time. There's so much goddamn silence, and the longer I talk, the less I have to edit around it. But yeah, so like that meaning kind of changed, but I wanted to keep that visual because I thought it was cool, and I thought I might be able to do something with it later if I thought of an interesting explanation for it. Because I knew it had meaning at one point, and I knew I could get more meaning out of it later. I just needed to figure out the details of what. And that's actually an unusual thing in Neon Dynamo. A lot of times I know specifically what I mean with something and what I'm implying with something. That was one where I'm like, sometimes I'll like adjust details a little bit, but like the core idea is the same. Anais Prime was supposed to appear later in the series, but I realized, why the fuck would she? Like, why would the Neon Dynamo have its main AI, the good version of it that doesn't suck like Anais Light does, trapped behind like super dense layers of like repairs? Oh, if you repair steps 16 through 28, you finally got the thing that makes the ship run. I realized it was dumb. And I had no like, there was nothing I gained about not having Anais Prime in the story. There's no, like, secret she hides. She's a goddamn floaty hologram girl. Like, there was no benefit to not having her. So I put her in, I think chapter 7 is when she first appears. That's Star Supper Plaza. Or is it chapter 6 at Star Supper Plaza? Chapter 4. Chapter 3, 2 and 3 are Silent Synthine, Part 1 and 2. Then it's Chapter 4, Deadliest Deep Town. Chapter 5. Chapter... What? The Slimy Anticlimax. Or no, Chapter 4 is Slimy Anticlimax. Chapter 5 is Deadliest Deep Thine. And then Chapter 6 is Star Supper Plaza. And then Chapter 7 and 8 are Grenadier, Part 1 and 2. But, like, basically, Neon Dynamo is a spin-off of a comic that never properly released from an Undertale AU idea. And that's kind of why it held such, like, a soft spot in my heart. That's, like, I can't ever really let go of that idea knowing that's why I have Neon Dynamo. And I mean, like, if you like Freddy and Friends newspaper, it's Neon Dynamo to thank for that. I would not be into comics if I didn't have a comic I cared about like Neon Dynamo as much to want to keep improving and work on it, because I'm not a naturally talented artist. I am a very brute force self-taught learner with a lot of it. Like, I had a great art teacher in high school for my art class, but that was not like, I did not have private lessons or anything like that. That was just like a good teacher in a subject I had a chance to take, and I did, and it helped a decent bit. But there's a lot of art, especially with the digital half of it, because he was much more of a traditional teacher, like here's how you paint with your charcoal, and then use charcoals in these spots, and then like the basics of shading and color theory. It was a lot of that he taught, but a lot of like the digital techniques and like what rules are what, like in Clip Studio, that was all self-taught. And maybe I would look something up if I knew there was an effect in the system and I just didn't know how to use it. But like the actual way it all came together was something I self-taught. Now, like I said, I've seen people who are less into art and are like, I just do art every now and then they draw something and it's fucking like true manga level quality or something like that. And meanwhile, like I've been trying to do my damn comic for who knows how, for like since 2020 at least. Yeah, I think Neon Dynamo Chapter 1 is May 2020, I think. So yeah, I mean, and then that was years after I started wanting to do like Plague Chronicles and all that. So yeah, that had to be a good time gap. But yeah, if I didn't have like projects I wanted to do, I don't think I would have stuck to comics as much as I did to get to the point of making Freddy and Friends. That would have been just an idea in my head I could have never executed. Because that's the thing, is like there's so many ideas I want to do, but I'm like, I don't think I don't think I can, or I know I can't. And Freddy and Friends is one of those. Where it's like, if I did not have the comic outlet, I don't think that thing could have existed. Because I would either be dedicating... Actually, no, yeah. If I wasn't into making a Dynamo, I wouldn't have the art talents or experience to make any other version of it. It's something that only makes sense in a visual goddamn medium. Because it's like, why... Like, maybe they could have made Freddy and Friends books. But who the fuck is going to read Freddy and Friends books made by, like, this one random FNAF theorist? Like, maybe a few people, but not as many as I think Freddy and Friends newspaper would have reached. And it doesn't feel as natural as, oh yeah, we have these comic strips you get if you enter the pizzeria. They're like on the back of the sheet, and they're taken from this show we made. That's, to me, that's just very intuitive, conceptually. I mean, it's I had to kind of work around it to make sure it could exist reasonably, but like, I don't think it takes that many leaps to see Freddy and Friends exist the way I had it. Let me get something queued up. I'm trying to, it's very slow, but I have to export from GarageBand to Google Drive to get these files to my computer for making these videos. So I think I'm just gonna have to cut all of the original episode 10 in favor of like the real episode 10. Because all of that's missing. Hold on. Okay, no. That's a decent length. That's 37 minutes. That's perfectly serviceable for video. Sorry. If anyone's even listening this far. I mean, you get to watch Help Wanted gameplay in the background. I guess that's... that should be decent. Like, a Subway Surfer meme level distraction. Yeah, so, like... Yeah, no, I must already exist. But I've always wanted to do I've always wanted to make... I think I originally wanted it to be called Mischief Tale, but I later kind of renamed it to Monarch Tale. When I kind of figured out what I was doing with the rest of the story, because the biggest problem with Mischief Tale, as I originally envisioned it, was the literal only goddamn joke was the weird, bizarre reality warping frisk. It was just them being weird, and that's kind of it. It wouldn't have been good if I made it. It would have been the aforementioned garbage I talked about previously. That maybe a few people would have liked. The current version of it, and I still do want to make it but it would be a bigger project overall. Is it starts out making you think it's this cliche genocide run AU story, right? So it's like, oh, Frisk's just killing everyone over and over again. But then the first page already tells you something's a little off, which is, I don't know why I'm so obsessed with Azrael, but it's not even really Azrael in this context. In this context, it's Lord Dreamer. So the difference between this and Crow's Tale. Crow's Tale is a universe where Azrael is the lone king of the underground. With Kara completely out of his life now after so much time. His parents passed away from age, because they mentioned that in Undertale Classic that that boss monsters don't age unless they have a child. Which is really fucking weird, but it's the rule they gave. So if Azrael survives childhood, eventually Toriel and Asgore are going to pass away from age. And the idea is he's just been kind of a lone wolf in the underground that entire time. And in this version, it's... I mean, in a way, Crow's Tale's kind of a riff on Monarch Tale's plan, but Monarch Tale's story has Azrael absorb Kara's soul early on, and then they make it back. The fusion kind of makes it back alive after Kara's being like, okay, fine, you don't want to kill monsters, we can just leave, make sure we're alive. And they get out basically unscathed. I mean, relatively unscathed. And then it's just the fusion that just, once again, it's the same idea where Asgore Toriel will pass away from age. But it's a lot closer to... I mean, it's borderline identical just with... like I said, it ends up being called Lord Dreamer, the fusion. I feel it's very in character for the slight, like, childishness that Azrael's concepts come with. Even in Deltarune, it's like... he still has this, like, OC Chaos God thing on the computer. So I like to think that Azrael would be, like, stuck with, like, the thing they can agree on is Lord Dreamer. Now I'm thinking, okay, this is my stupid ADHD pinball brain, where one idea bounces off the other and then it slowly becomes completely disconnected. My brain said, Lord Dreamer, Lord Garmadon, Lego Ninjago movie. I've never seen the Lego Ninjago movie. I know one clip of the Lego Ninjago movie. How could I ruin your life? I was never there. Lord Garmadon to Lloyd. That's the only joke I know from that movie. It's the only thing I know from that movie. But it's stuck in my head ever since. So Lord Dreamer's been rolling things, and there's, like, some changes where, because it's Kara and Azrael both, it is both of their personalities set. In fact, it's even stated that Dreamer has been one thing for so long that Kara and Azrael have effectively faded away into this one mixed kind of puddle in their brain. So Dreamer is just kind of like not as peaceful and nice as Azrael should have been if he had grown up with no problems. But also not as pure-blooded spiteful of humanity as Kara would be. So it's almost like this fair judgment of, like, if you're genuinely helpful to the underground and you don't want to hurt people, you can live here scot-free. In fact, we see 4 humans alive in Chapter 1 so far of what I've drawn of it. But then it's implied 2 of them weren't good enough to keep around. Okay, one of them's a joke death. The other one's like a more serious one. The 2 that didn't survive of the classic 6 before Frisk, or I think I might have to write... I just realized it's kind of a plot hole if Azrael has Kara's soul. I might just write in that they don't really want to leave. Maybe. That's one detail I have to actually fix, because that's kind of like... Crow's Tale brings up the idea is if you have a ruler who's smart enough to know they only need 1 soul to free everyone, like, Why wouldn't they? But I'm sure there's a reason I can justify. I might just say that Kara doesn't want them to leave. That like Dreamer can't bring themselves to let people leave because it's the knowledge that Kara has of how the surface can be and that fear of it. And I might have that be like a character arc for them to like let it all move on. And like I'm holding back my own kingdom. I'm being selfish in my own way. Whatever. I could do that story arc. But the other two, the idea is the Courage one genuinely was like just too afraid of the idea of living with monsters and just wanted to go out fighting, and did. The idea with the Integrity one, the blue soul, the orange soul with the fist, the glove, that's the one that would genuinely die from fear of change in monsters. I think the channel Swanky Box did a video about, because that channel used to do like a lot of Undertale content. And the idea of what scenario could a genocide run as we think of it make sense from the perspective of a little kid who, without malice, or without like, not like I want to kill everyone, like I'm scared of everyone and I want to hurt everyone in my way because they scare me. Like that kind of like, that was kind of the idea of that video, is like how far could you get before it becomes genuinely so cruel that it only makes sense from evil intentions. The Courage Soul or the Orange Soul would be like that in this context, where it's like not hunting down people to hurt them, but so scared of monsters that they can't spare anyone. The Integrity Soul is supposed to be a joke kind of death, where they were just too fucking pretentious, and somehow that gets them killed. Like, I don't need your help, I can solve this puzzle on my own, and then falls off a cliff or something like that. Like, that's kind of the bit there, is too much integrity, can't accept help from others. In, like, the most caring, generous place in the world, is the Underground so nice compared to the real world. Assuming the surface is like the real human world, the Underground seems so peaceful and happy. It's almost the theme with Kara's character. But the idea of Monarch is you have that world, which is a much more peaceful world than even like the normal Underground, because like monsters aren't even trying to kill you. The only reason the Royal Guard exists is to prevent someone like the Courage Soul from just attacking people at random. And to kill anyone who might be a threat, because Dreamer is half Kara, and that's personality is going to be in there. And then you have this Frisk who, because this is riffing on narrator theory. The idea of narrator theory is that Kara is the narrator of Undertale, and might even be, and this takes it a little step further, implies that the choices you make, especially the dialogue-based choices, are purely created by Kara. And in this timeline where Kara is part of Azriel's consciousness as Dreamer, or they're fused together, or however you want to think of it, the idea is that Frisk has no ability to make choices other than kill and spare, and you cannot complete a true pacifist run by only sparing. You have to make certain choices and acts to progress the story in that way, and if you don't have those choices and you don't have the ability to like pseudo-speak the way Frisk kind of needs to for certain events and dialogue exchanges, means Frisk cannot save everyone. And the only thing that causes new things to happen is Azriel, or this Dreamer who has Kara's soul. And the idea is, as a monster who is ruling and trying to protect the Underground, between the human soul and that motivation, has the determination not to control the resets, but to remember them seamlessly the way Flowey does. So the only thing that gets Dreamer to react properly is just killing everyone. So it's kind of like this, almost like evolution of like, okay, I can only spare people. I can get neutral ending, the equivalent of neutral endings. I can live peacefully. or I can get new things to happen. And the kind of crux that this story is starting on is the idea of this Frisk who has only one option, effectively, to get new content. And the idea that Frisk is purely driven by new things happening. The same way Flowey was in many regards in Undertale Classic. It's like, I've seen everything else happen, I need something new. Will I kill out of boredom or frustration? And in this context, the only option Frisk would have to get something new is just to keep killing people and have Dreamer react time and time again. And that's where we start the comic finally. Is Dreamer timelines and timelines into this history. And the final plan they have to finally deal with Frisk. And then that creates... The result of that creates kind of my riff on that original Unstoppable Frisk premise, but better than just I'm powerful, fuck you, haha. That's it. D tier Bill Cipher. That's what the original one would have been, I guess. This Frisk would have been that premise, basically, or would not be that premise. It would be. It's kind of like this reverse. It's many ways a redemption arc, like after that, after the plan unfolds and all that. Which I'll if I ever leave the comic, I'll leave people to find them because we're starting to enter like this is content I would consider spoiler territory rather than just background that's slowly explained. Like I don't consider revealing the background information a spoiler as much as like these are the events that are happening in the story in real time. If it was like a twist reveal, like I was Alistair Scrapeboard the whole time, if it was something like that, I would not reveal that. But in this context, it's just like this is the like the setup. And we get more and more understanding of the setup as time goes on. But we have an event happen to Frisk that causes a permanent change in how they're able to act and interact with the world. And the way it works causes them to slowly have to learn empathy and emotion again. And part of that, what that happens is it gives Azrael a chance to basically do over. So normally in Undertale, right, it's all resets around the moment Frisk falls into the underground. That is the start of Undertale. Because of this event, for a brief moment, Dreamer has the opportunity to go back to effectively what it would have been their version of it. Which is just this random day where, at this point, Azrael and Kara had fully melted into the subconscious of Dreamer. And we're not two separate conscious entities, but one thing. So that's the start of Dreamer's story, is the day Kara and Azrael fade into their subconscious. And they get to basically do almost like half their life over again. Accounting for what Frisk will be down the road. And that leads to this kind of slightly warped version of the Underground that's much more combat-centric. It's a lot closer to what original Undertale was, with like bosses around around the corners to keep the humans at bay. Most of the humans are still spared and prepared. Or actually, I think... No, I had an idea version of that where it's like the final gauntlet would be all the spared humans like pitted against Frisk, but I decided not against that. For a frankly darker premise, which is... No, all of the humans are killed in this timeline, too, like original Undertale, but instead of being just kept in jars or whatever Asgore had, the weird containers, they're given to monsters who are deemed worthy or requiring of power. With once again, the sole purpose of killing Frisk. Which, the idea of that angle comes from the same emotions as, like, Undyne's, like, you'll destroy the entire world if I let you through feelings. And premise, like, the idea is Dreamer has deduced Frisk is that level of dangerous. If I do not do something that will effectively stop him forever, from Dreamer's perspective, the world's just going to die forever and ever, and he's going to be trapped in that. So that's why especially with the car angle and that personality, it's justifiable to them to take this extreme. Whereas on the complete opposite side, you have this Frisk learning empathy again, dealing with an underground born specifically to defeat them, and erase them forever, effectively. And that's kind of that's like the true plot of Monarch Tale after that initial kind of genocide AU fake out. And that's like the gist of Monarch Tale, at least at the start. And then I know what stories I would want to do. I've kind of have two different routes of it. I have one route where Monarch Tale is kind of just like its characters and cast, and that version of Frisk and Dreamer are dragged through other storylines and AUs potentially. Or I make it like an anthology where like Crow's Tale is like season 1 and 2, and then Monarch Tale is like season 3. And then I have so many other random AU ideas that are not like stories. They're just like setups and like designs. Which, to be fair, it's like 90% of AUs anyway. But like, one of them, I have this thing. I really want to have this bit where every AU that's not like a dedicated one, like Crow's Tale or Monarch Tale, where there's like an actual story and characters and like a fundamental like, hey, this is the switch in the timeline. Kind of thing. But I have this bit where I want them all to be like 10 different AU ideas rolled into one. Maybe not that much, but like, it's Underfell, it's also Underswap, it's also Outer Tale, it's also a little bit of Dust Tale, it's also like World War IV in space colony battle. Also, Asgore's a dictator in this timeline. Also, Asgore's alive. Also, Undyne's like the leader of a rebellion. It's not actually that depressing. It's like that premise, like, or it's just like so many ideas layered, where it's like some characters are just switched at random, which causes like Demi-switched Tail to be in the name, and it would just be like this. It would be like 5 different descriptors in the name of what it is. I just find that idea hilarious, especially if it leads to an actually interesting AU, where the premise is fundamentally very simple. Like, oh, it's just, what if Asgore was a tyrant in space, and there's a rebellion trying to protect humans so he doesn't get his hands on them? That's like the entire premise. But it's like, Demi, Underfail, Switch Fate, Hard Relux. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Oh, and the reason it would be called Monarch Tale is, A, there's a character named Monarch I have planned in it. And all of Dreamer's cards, because remember, this is Asriel, this is 50% Asriel, who even when trying to take things seriously has goofy elements to his personality. So, all of them have, like, royal names now, like, all of the bosses, so it would be like, Royal Executioner Sans, Duke of Puzzles Papyrus, like Arch Warrior Undyne, like, it'd all be that, and it's supposed to be a little campy, because once again, this is 50% Asriel, naming them, so it's like, there's practical positions being given to them, but there's still that little bit of doofiness buried behind, like, this serious facade, because, like, keep in mind, I'm not saying Asriel wouldn't take this seriously. I'm saying Dreamer, in earnest, thinks this sounds cool and intimidating. It's like, oh, that will really rattle them. And it's the dorkiest shit ever. That is, like, the premise there. So that's why it's Monarch Tale. It's in many ways just as much Dreamer's story, the Monarch. And then there's also... Monarch is metaphorical for butterfly of rebirth with Frisk. So Monarch, Butterfly, and then they're all royal positions, Monarch, and one of the characters will be named Monarch. And Monarch's not really an original character, but effectively is in practice, by the way. It's not even that big of a reveal. I'm just like, oh, keep people invested in wondering what will happen. but like that's, and then I have like, I have a take on Undertale, on like the Error Sans kind of Ink Sans plotline concept, but it would be very different from the traditional versions in many regards. With the idea of being more, I guess the idea would be more that Error and Ink are representations of creativity and regret. Because, like, the antithesis of creativity is not, like, writer's block or, like, lack of hope. It's not, like, anything like that. The opposite of creativity is regretting creation. And the opposite of creativity is, like, not destruction or, like, lack of imagination. Like I said, it's regret. It's, I made this thing and I don't like that I did. And I feel like a story driven around that kind of emotion set with those two could do a lot more than just, this is the good one who makes shit by painting and is covered in rainbows and shit, and this is the scary blue, black, orangish one with strings coming out of his hands. And the idea being that, like, they're both fundamentally primordial. You'll always have people who want to create, and you'll always have people who regret what they made. At least that's like, by the way, when I say regret is like the opposite of creativity, I mean for the sake of this story, at the very least, I do kind of feel that way, but I could easily see a case of like, I don't know, what would the word for lack of imagination being the opposite, or like, I guess unimaginative. Like you could argue that, but like, for the sake of what destroys creation, it's the regret of creation. There are so many cases in like history of famous artists and people who just destroyed their own works because for whatever reason life drove them to the point where they hated the fact that they made it. Like one of the most famous, not famous, but like he is responsible for so much of how we understand film. It's the one who it's a legend. It's the fucking premise of Hugo, the movie Hugo. What the hell? It's the artist. The French filmmaker who made so many like amazing like visual effects and like films so much, and he like, and it, like his shit ended up getting like the film reels ended up getting sold to make like boot heels and shit like that. And, like, I think he even destroyed, like, some of his own creations, like, in Disappointment and, like, other stuff like that. Like, that feeling of, like, everything being ripped away and hating the fact that and kind of hating yourself for those things is, like, what I would want Error to represent in this and be kind of driven by. Like, because I think that's the core of, like, what, in many ways, Error represents already, is, like, you should not exist, there should only be this thing. But in this, it's more like, I can't erase the original, but I can, like, take you all down. Like, think of it from, like, this perspective. If Ink is, like, I want to make new things, I want to have fun, I love this thing, and I want to have more of it, and I want to make my own take on it. Error is I shouldn't have made this, I'm a dumb, cringy 14-year-old with moderate art talent kind of personality, like... And also, like, the Undertale is, like, the only real one. Like, that was good, but I don't understand it, and I can't handle it. Anyway, and this, like, Error wouldn't even like Undertale, per se. It would just be like I can't get rid of that one, but I can get rid of you. With the idea... And I also want Error to be more of a literal virus in a case where it's, like, almost like this infection that spreads among whatever thing it needs at the time to survive. With it just latching onto Sans as a way of mocking Ink, effectively, because, like, Sans is the most popular Undertale character. I don't think that's a fucking controversial statement at all to make. He is the one who transitions, like, transcends, not transitions. The one who transcends like Undertale memedom and everything else. He is the one people know, and Error taking hold of that and like taking hold of the, and like so many AUs have Sans as like the focus and the weight to it, that even if you don't have even if you were a character in universe, if you understood the multiverse and it actually was laid out the way the fandom ended up laying it out, then Sans would be the main point of so many goddamn stories. And if Ink Sans or multiple Ink Sans or however I want to do it are the ones canonically creating all these things, Error and the thing and the force it represents would pick that centerpiece that's so common to mock Ink. This is how I would like phrase it. And the reason I say like Ink and Error, not Ink Sans and Error Sans, is because I don't think I would lock either of them to being Sans, because I can kind of see how you could get Error Sans out of original Sans, conceptually. I don't fucking get how you get Ink Sans out of Sans. That's like so against his personality. He like Sans is so defeatist at times, and so like because that Sans only does something when there's no other option left, and he's so frustrated by seeing you kill everyone that he has to do something. It is like, even if I know this is pointless, it's too far. I have to do something. And that's only if every single person up to that point has been killed. Maybe some people stowed away by Alphys and evacuated, but that's it. Like, it has score beyond that point. And that like and if you read his dialogue in his boss fight, you get the sense of like why he feels hopeless, and this idea of like staring at someone who can do anything and can get back up no matter how many times you fight them, and just being stuck facing that. And it's just like, I don't think of that as the representation of creativity and wanting to like, and the desire and energy to make. That is not the sense of feelings and emotions that comes to me making something. At least personally, and I don't think of most people coming from that set of emotions either. Especially in the context of Ink Sans, of like creating fan works of other things. Like, if any character was going to be the incarnation of creation and fandom, it would be fucking Alphys or maybe Papyrus. I still will have Ink as probably a skeletal figure, but I don't want him personally to be like Ink Sans unless it's a specific variant of Ink. And that's the other thing is I think I would do Ink as multiple characters. This has just become the Undertale variety hour, by the way. Deal with it. You're probably not watching this video at a certain point anyway. I think I would want to do Ink as a collective with Error being a singular. Error is one virus that latches on and takes whatever form it needs. And every time it's killed, it will put itself back together to hunt down more. Regret is not something only one person has, but creativity is something that each person has their own version of. And therefore there would be multiple Inks, but there would only be one Error. And it may reach other people, it might not. I guess you would phrase it as like regret takes many forms, but it's all regret. That's how I would kind of explain this premise. And Error, and that's kind of like the emotions that come behind Error, and I want the Ink Sans kind of implied to be responsible for Monarch Tail or Crow's Tail, or kind of like, I don't want to say he's my Error Sans or my Ink Sans, but like, there's kind of no way not to do it, you know? Like, I can't be like, this is someone else's creativity. It's like, if it's my work, it's going to be inherently implied that this incarnation of creativity is mine. Like, unless I would specifically like hunt down, like, there's only one way I think I could do it, and I don't want to bring real life people into it, is the problem, which would be to imply that this ink is Because in many ways, Undertale is the first ever AU for Undertale. I don't even remember who created Undertale off the top of my head. To imply it was theirs would be the only other way to do it. Like, this is the first ever Inc. would be like the main one the story would focus on. It would have to be that or my own or like a loose general one. And even if I left it completely ambiguous, no implications it was related to any real world person at all, you're always going to have the takeaway that it's the creator, or it's just or at least people were going to make that connection. So even though I personally don't intend it to be anyone, I feel like I might as well, not imply it. I don't want it to be implied. I don't want it to be like, this is me. This is my power, creativity, God. I don't like that premise. But it's like, if I'm toying with the idea of representing creativity and creation, it's inherent in a way. Or at least it feels inherent. So I'm going to be conscious of that comparison and concept. It's just not going to be like, this is SireSquawks' Ink God. This is a ink. I think an hour should do. I think that's enough. But it would be a storyline involving them, specifically with the idea of not deadbeat, but a kind of has-been ink who just can't, who is effectively consumed by the regret that error represents, but for some reason can't let their creations be destroyed, and they don't understand why. That's kind of like the emotion set I would want that storyline to be. Like, why do I have attachment to it? Why can't I let it go? And that would be the kind of impetus to that plotline and the central focus of it. That's kind of one of those do I bring the Monarch plotline into that? Do I bring Crow's Tail into that? I know how I would do it if I did, but is that the best way to tell that story? And I think it might be, because I don't see why this vision I have for Ink, who ironically is closer to Sans than most Ink interpretations are, would suddenly get the burst of I just need to do it now. I need to get my bootstraps and start drawing again, or however universe creation works. I don't see why Ink would come to that conclusion. This kind of depressed Ink on their own. Unless there was someone, good or bad, to get them to want to create more again. And I think that might work a little better than just now that error is actually on my front door, I'm gonna change entirely. That kind of works for a self-reflection story, but I think it might be more interesting if the Monarch group, or even just Dreamer or someone like that, gets them to change, because that means it's the creator kind of talking to its creations and learning why they cared in the first place. That's kind of what I think that would work better. I'm trying to talking a lot more candidly and a lot more open to spoilers and plot lines, because no one's fucking going to watch this far. This is process this. This is part 7. This was supposed to be part 6 and 7, but the audio is messed up. This is part 7 or part 6 of a Let's Play on a 15,000 subscriber channel, not known for Let's Plays, that the audio cut out in, that for the past 40-50 minutes, I've been talking about my own webcomic and Undertale AU lore. No one has made it this far or through most of this video. I could say fucking anything at this point. And hell, if I overstep my bounds and speak too long or have too much audio, I'll just put in a little bit of TEN's gameplay or something to extend it so I have more audio to work with when I'm talking, or the Lost 10. I have in my files a real 10 and this unnamed 10th. Or like what would have been 10. Because the mic wasn't on. For 6 and 7, it ran 6, 7, and 8. It ran out of power. Well, 8's a little funky because I thought I just didn't turn it on with 6 and 7. But what I realized with 8 was it ran out of power, and I realized that after because it showed the little sound blips for a little bit, so I assumed it was working, and then I actually finished it and it wasn't. It didn't even record those little sound blips. That was just like, I think that was just like it turning on basically, and like the electricity comes from that or whatever, like or the inherent signal or something like that. I think. But yeah, this has been the Squawks cast no one wanted and no one cares about, that I talked about for an hour and 12 minutes. Don't have to sync audio on this one. There's no... It's just me talking. I just realized, like, Hold on. What am I doing an hour into... It's just me doing TJ Music Man in the shooting gallery. With me talking about Undertale AU in the goddamn background. Hey, you don't have to hear me hitting my microphone nearly as much as I did. Oh, this is so silly. This is the most ridiculous episode, probably. Unless other ones are missing audio. Anyway. But...